So this here is going to be a painting video for Beasts of Nurgle. We've got two here. We're actually doing a bunch of different ones. This is what they look like when they're finished, and if you think that this looks pretty good, then by all means stay tuned and we'll show you how we painted up the way we did. We'll take you through it step by step. And if you like this kind of video, or if you like the models or anything along those lines, leave a like or a comment on the channel, and we'll try to respond whenever we can. Otherwise than that, stay tuned and we'll show you how we painted these guys up. So this here's a painting video for Beasts of Nurgle. So we decided to paint these up to match our other models in the army. So the first thing we did was base coat them with a Wraithbone spray. So that's the contrast based spray. You could also use a white or anything else off label. But anyway, we want a light base coat for this because we're going to do most of this with shades. So now that the base coat is finished, what we're going to do here is overlay some shade. And you can do the whole model if you want. I think we're going to do a two-tone effect on this one and keep sort of the underside and underneath the tail a lighter color than the back. So what we're going to do with that on the back part, what's going to be green, is we're going to start with a Athonian Camoshade shade. And we're just going to put that generously over the entire model. We probably will do two coats of that. So we'll be back here in a few minutes just to see what that looks like. But we're just going to put it on, fairly thick and see what it looks like once it dries. So this is our model after we finished the first coating of Athonian Camoshade. Now we wanted it a little bit darker. So we did a second coat on our model, which ended up looking like that. And then that gave us our nice little recesses, our deep spots, our highlights. It'll keep going till it dries. But effectively that will be our shade finished. And it'll be our base layer for our Beast of Nurgle at the moment. So now that our Beast of Nurgle is finished, our next layer we're going to put over that is a dry brush just to catch the highlights over the top and sort of even them all out because it's a little bit blotchy as it stands. And we're going to do that with some Nurgling green. And that'll help tie it in with the Great Unclean One for our list that we did earlier. I can put the link in the description in the bottom if you want to see how we painted him up. But effectively, it's very similar to this. And then we added the Nurgling green. So we'll do that here just to overlay all of the high points with just a dry brush. And be back in a few minutes once that's finished. So from there, what we're going to do is we're going to come over and start working on the chest here, this underbelly area. So we're going to take a little bit of Seraphim Sepia, which is just a shade here, and then we're just going to start putting that just fully all over this area here. We'll put it nice and thick like we did with the first coating of the green shade that we did. And then what we're aiming for is to have a look similar to this, where it's collected all in all of the grooves, just like so. Collected in, and it really highlights the area. So this is our model. We're just going to take our shade, and just as we said, just start putting it on, just like that. One coat, fairly thick. It'll dry, and then as it dries, it'll fill in. The thicker you make it, the easier it is to cover the green where you went over. But that said, any overlap, it's Nurgle, so it's allowed to pretty much be a little messy. Nurgle models are fairly forgiving when it comes to doing the painting on them and the color boundaries. You may want to do the organs. We're going to come back and do those anyway later. But what we do want to do is make sure we get all of the chest and all of the scales and things like that on the stomach. Don't forget the spot on the tail here. So we'll do those now. We'll be right back when it's all done. So this here's our beast now that we finished with the shade. So as you can see, the stomach is all finished. So what we're going to do now that we've got that done, is we're going to start going over all of the wounds. So that's all of the organs in here, the inside of all of these cuts that you see here, the inside of the mouth if we want to. We're going to do all of the hair, the tubes here, or tentacles, depending on what they've got. So we'll do all those as well. All with Screamer Pink, which is a purple pink type base. We're going to use different highlights for each one. So we'll use sort of a pink horror later on top of the organs to make them look more fleshy, probably the same thing on the tubes. We're going to do Screamer Pink on all of these processes here, these little tentacle feeder processes like so. And we'll probably do a highlight over those of a bluish color, because with a purple base, we can do either or. So, and that'll make them look a little bit different. But we're going to do all of that now. It's no short amount of work. All of the tentacles in here and amongst the hair takes quite a bit of time, but we'll do them all, and then we'll see what it looks like when we're finished. So this here's our model now that we finished with the Screamer Pink. And as you can see, we did all the hair, like we said, as well as all the organs, all of the cuts and wounds on the side of the body here. And then we did all of these little proboscide all along the side here for propulsion. So we did all those as well, and everything is that base Screamer Pink. So now what we're going to do, and this is completely optional, is we're going to add a shade just to bring out some of the details with the nubs and the rings on the top and things like that, and all the organs. I'm going to do that with a little bit of Carroberg Crimson here. So we're going to put that right in and let it sink in just to bring out some of the details that are there. So we'll just take a little bit, just like so. We'll just put it right in, right into the spot there. Try not to get it on the skin around. But that said, if you do, it's, once again, Nurgle are allowed to be a little messy because, of course, they're very forgiving models because they're slimy and gross. So we'll do all that now. Keep going at this. We'll do all around the hair as well, all up around here, just to bring out more of the detail that's there. Including on all the rings. So we'll finish that off, let it dry, and we'll be back in a few minutes once this model is finished. So here's our model that we finished with the Carroberg shade, and it's had time to dry. And as you can see, it added a lot of depth to all of the Screamer Pink that we did as a base. So now that that's done, we're going to lighten that back up with a highlight. So our first choice is going to be Pink Horror. And what we're going to do is dry brush that lightly over the tentacles on the head. Just sort of very lightly, just brush it right across everything. And anyway, pick a sort of an overhead light source. And then, of course, we're just going to brush downwards like that. We're also going to do some of the organs in here. If you want to leave some darker and gloopier, you can. But brighten out a few of them just so that there's a contrast there. And then we're going to do some of the wounds just to add a highlight to those as well. They still stand out quite a bit, but we're going to add another shade later that'll sort that out when we're doing some other details. So we'll do that now, just dry brushing from the top and really lighten that up, and we'll show you what it looks like compared to this one, and then you'll get an idea of it. I'm going to put a little bit on our brush, wipe it right down till there's almost nothing left, as you can see there, and just down swipe that on all of the tentacles from above. It's going to make a very light coat, and we're just going to do that over and over again until we get the texture and color that we like. We'll do the same thing on the organs here, just slowly lighten them up until we get the shades that we like. So this is our model before we do the Pink Horror, and then this is what it looks like afterwards. And as you can see, we've added the two-tone effect on the tentacles here. Definitely change the color, but they do taper off into a darker shade as they go downwards, which creates the overhead light approach. So this is our model now that we finished with the Pink Horror. And like we mentioned before, this is how it looks here. Now, an optional thing we could do, and we did it on some but not other models here, is we added, as you can see, there's a slight color difference between these two models. What we did was we actually added one more dry brush of Emperor's Children just over the top to lighten that up a little tiny bit more and just hit really just the high points here. Same thing, dry brush just very lightly, and that changed the shade just a little tiny bit there. So the next set of colors, what we're going to do is the scale bits proboscises or probes or vents or whatever you want to call them that are running along the side here. So we base coated those with Screamer Pink as well. And what we're going to do now is change the shade. We don't want them quite to match the ones on the top here. So more dry brushing. And in this case, what we're going to do, or what we did, is we took a little bit of Daemonette hide and dry brushed that right over. And then a little bit of Slaanesh gray over the top. And then that created that two-tone effect and made it more blue in color than the pink that we had for everything else. What we're going to do now is probably do some of the boils and pustules here. I'm going to do with that first. For the boils and pustules, we're going to use some Ungor flesh here. And we're going to do each of those. And then there's some along the back. There's a bunch in some of the tentacle hair here. There won't be any on the ribbon hair, but definitely on the tentacle hair. So we'll come by and we'll just drip each of those just to get them colored. It'll add more depth to the model and add more detail, which will make us stand out more. There'll be a bunch around the face. So we'll do those now and be back in a few minutes. So this here's our model now that we finished with the Ungor flesh. And as you can see, we did all of the spots along the tentacles as well as the body. Depends on which head you have, but we've done pretty much the same in both ways. There are no tentacles on the spaghetti type heads though, the ribbon heads, but there are some along the back. So those are all done. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go back over the pustules as well as all of the wounds. And we're going to coat it all with a little bit of red shade with Reikland Fleshshade. What that does is it's going to fill in all the cracks in the area and make it look very sore and very swollen, very infected, which is what we want for a Beast of Nurgle. So for our Fleshshade, all we're going to do is just brush it straight over the sore areas like that. Trying to get all the areas of all the cuts, filling in any little depressions, any holes, any wounds, like so. And any place if you put it on too heavy, a little bit of water will flush it down and help it spread a little bit and lighten it up. So we're going to do that on all of the wounds, throughout the back, on the shoulders, on the green, on the chest, on the stomach, on all the colors like so, blending it off, filling in any grooves, and have different strengths of the shade. And what that'll do will make the model much more interesting. So we'll finish that up here, and we'll catch back up in a few minutes once that's all done. And as you can see, once it's dried, it's created these sore areas, these pustule areas. What we're going to do now is just put a dab of Ungor flesh back on those to sort of make them appear 3D and raised. And then we're also possibly in some places, maybe a drop of Ushabti bone just at the very top to make it very pus-filled. Those two make a nice series of colors here. So we'll use those now. And once again, it's just brushing over the lumps in some of the higher spots and on some of the other spots along the back here if you want. So we'll do those now, meet back here in a few minutes. So here's our models now that we finished with the pustules. And as you can see, we've lit them all right back up. So we've got the dark edges here, and then the lighter spot on the top, and then the very light little blip at the top, just to make it look sort of a lot more depth to it, and it looks all pustuley and it looks all swollen and nasty. So from there, we're going to move on to all of these bones, these horns that we've got up here, as well as, depending on which models we use, the rib cages over here as well, and then other horns up here. So each of these models have some horns, some things like that. They'll have some bony horns on the back here. So all of that stuff, all that bone-like processes, what we're going to do with that is do the usual thing that we do for bones. We're going to start with a base coat of Rakarth flesh, and then we're going to shade it with Seraphim Sepia, and then we're going to add a highlight layer, just a very light dry brush of Ushabti bone, and that should make those bones stand out. If it was a human bone or a freshly done skull, we'd do like Screaming Skull over the top still. But because this is Nurgle and it's rotten and it's decaying and all that stuff, we'll probably leave it with the darker tone. And Ushabti bone's what we already used here, so there's probably some on your palette already. So we'll do that now and be back here again once that's finished. So there's our model now that we finished with the Rakarth flesh, and then the Seraphim Sepia, and then the Ushabti bone. And as you can see, the shade pooled more down toward the bottom here, and it's lighter up toward the top, just as the dry brush went. We just dry brushed from the top like this. And of course, it laid down thicker on the top than the bottom. We did the same thing with the rib cage, brushing upwards in this direction here, so it's lighter along the edge. And then same going this way. Being careful, we did get a few spots where it went on the gory edge here, but I kind of like it, so I left it there. You really see it stand out in the other models that have the teeth. So in this case here. So as you can see, it pooled more up towards the top. A subtle sideways dry brush highlighted all the high points, and you got a really nice set of sort of disgusting chompers, as well as another set of horns. And then we also did the spikes on the back here. Now the claws are optional. And a set of them right here. So those claws there. Now they're optional. You can do them with that color. I prefer to make them dark. And so I'll do the other setup, the base of black. So we'll use Abaddon black at the moment, followed by a dry brush of Eshin gray, followed by a very light highlight brush of, say, Dawnstone. And so with those three colors, we'll get sort of a darker look. While we're doing the Abaddon black, we'll probably do the bottom of the base as well, since they're still painted from the original base spray paint that we had did. So we'll do all that now and just be back in a few minutes. So here's our model now that we finished with the claws. And you don't see it as well on the smaller model. We did do the base as well. It's going to need another coat because you can definitely see the underlying base coat underneath the black. And even though we're going to flock the base, you'll still be able to see the edges. So that'll take another coat as well. But as far as the claws go, they're much darker now, but there is a gray tinge to them, especially that one there. Probably more visible on that model again. And as you can see there, it's dark with a lighter gray shade, just picking up the highlights there. So for the next part of our model, and probably one of the more important parts, since that's kind of where your eyes are drawn off the start, we're going to do the eyes here. So that's these two right here. So we have a couple of choices. We really want them to stand out. So you're going to use a very bright color. The two that come to mind obviously are going to be yellow and green, and you'll have a few choices of either. The brighter stuff I have is a Moot green and a Yriel yellow, although historically we've also used some Flash Gits yellow. Either one will work. They're very, very bright. They really, really stand out. The problem with using the green, and you could definitely use green if you like, is that there are a few models, if you use those heads, like this one here. This one here's got slime here coming out of his mouth. Now, if you want to color that slime, I feel like that's going to go green anyway. And then if you do the eyes green and the slime green, I think it's going to get sort of a little bit lost in translation there. So I prefer to use yellow for the eyes, saving green for the mouth. But you can do whichever one you like. And then you can put an optional eyeball just in the center. very, very lightly with a nice pointy brush. So that's probably where you start grabbing new brushes. And usually it's this fine detail work that makes me get the new brush each time. Since once you start doing shading and dry brushing, you start losing that edge. So that's a slight dab in the center to give you an eyeball over the top of either yellow or green, or another bright color. If you want red, that's a possibility. I'm going to use the yellow though, and then we'll meet back here and see what it all looks like when we're finished. So this here's our models now that we finished, and as you can see, we did the eyes, and we added the Abaddon black for the eyeball. The other thing we did, we added the slime that's over here, and then after we finish sealing it, we'll add a little bit of gloss on that, and then that'll make that a little bit more slimy. And then the only other thing we did is there's a little metal ring right there on the neck, so we did that with a little bit of iron breaker. But anyway, that's our models that are finished, and hopefully yours turned out just as well as these. And if that's the case, leave a like on the channel or leave a comment. It's been a while since we uploaded, so this is a nice, easy way to get back into it. And otherwise than that, hopefully we'll see you soon with another video. And thank you for watching this long.